When we picture the KGB during the Cold War, the mind goes to the alleys of Berlin or the shadow games of London and Washington. They seemed like an all-seeing, flawless intelligence machine. But to see the true scale of Soviet espionage and why it eventually failed, we have to look east, to Asia in the 1970s and 1980s. Here, the KGB ran two massive parallel operations. In Japan, they executed a relentless heist per rising economic superpower. In India, they deeply penetrated the highest levels of the world's largest democracy. The KGB succeeded on almost every front. They cracked diplomatic codes, bought off politicians, and smuggled out proprietary schematics for state-of-the-art microchips. And yet, the Soviet Union still collapsed. This leads to a central analytical question. If an intelligence agency can successfully steal the designs of its rivals and manipulate the governments of rising global powers, why couldn't it save its own empire? By the 1970s, Japan was growing at an average rate of 10% every year. They were rapidly shifting into a high-tech powerhouse, dominating the global market for semiconductor manufacturing and integrated circuits. The Soviets noticed. The KGB deployed a specialized division called Line X. Their sole objective was the theft of scientific and technical intelligence from the West and Japan. To Line X, the Japanese tech sector was a catalog. They cultivated corporate executives and researchers, who often viewed industrial espionage as just another facet of modern business, to quietly hand over massive volumes of semiconductor data and computer architectures. The volume of data being shipped to Moscow in diplomatic pouches was so large that KGB chiefs in Tokyo boasted that the value of this stolen technology entirely covered the operating costs for their foreign intelligence residency. This wasn't abstract research. In the mid-1980s, a Toshiba subsidiary, working with a Swedish firm, secretly sold advanced computer-guided machine tools directly to the Soviets. The Soviet military used this stolen data to manufacture highly precise, low-noise submarine propellers. Almost overnight, Soviet nuclear submarines became nearly impossible for American sonar arrays to detect. In this theater, the KGB successfully weaponized the openness of free markets. They turned Japanese corporate research and development into a direct, subsidized supply line for the Soviet military. In India, the KGB shifted its focus away from technical data toward aggressive political subversion within a developing democracy. The infiltration began with the embassy. The KGB deployed female agents, known as swallows, to compromise Indian diplomatic cipher clerks. By leveraging these traps and the resulting financial debt, Soviet codebreakers gained the ability to read India's secure international communications. Armed with this inside knowledge, the KGB unleashed active measures. They funneled secret cash to political factions and used forged documents to elevate sympathetic figures, like Defense Minister Krishna Menon. Backing Menon yielded a significant geopolitical return. Under his tenure, India shifted its primary arms dependency away from the West and toward Moscow, a transition cemented by the purchase of Soviet MiG-21 fighter jets. By the Indira Gandhi era, the KGB's sense of influence was massive. During the 1967 elections, they covertly funded the Communist Party and individual campaigns, eventually claiming to influence up to 40% of the newly elected Indian parliament. By the late 1970s, Soviet leadership believed they had achieved total victory in the region. They were convinced they could hack capitalist tech sectors at will and steer the world's largest democracy like a puppet. But this sprawling network was brittle. And at the end of the decade, it suffered a catastrophic unraveling. In October 1979, KGB officer Stanislav Lovchenko walked into a Tokyo hotel, contacted the CIA, and boarded a flight to Washington. That single defection burned the KGB's entire Japanese political intelligence network, sending agents into deep cover and freezing operations for years. In India, a different reality check occurred. Despite the millions of rubles pumped into secret funding and disinformation campaigns, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi suffered a crushing electoral defeat in 1977. The KGB had a critical blind spot. They equated bribing elites and forging documents with actual control. They failed to realize that covert intelligence operations cannot override the organic will of hundreds of millions of voting citizens. A similar gap between intelligence and reality plagued their technological heists in Japan. Despite stealing billions of dollars in cutting-edge semiconductor data, Soviet technology continued to fall drastically behind the very nations they were robbing. Rapid technological innovation requires a fast, iterative loop driven by market feedback. A rigid, top-down command economy cannot move at that speed. Stealing the exact schematic for a microchip is useless if your industrial base lacks the economic agility to actually manufacture it at scale. The KGB was feeding tomorrow's technology into yesterday's industrial sector. You cannot build a high-tech future in factories engineered to meet archaic heavy industry quotas. Espionage has a hard ceiling. Tactical intelligence victories, no matter how spectacular, can never outpace structural state decay. The KGB successfully stole the technical specifications for a world they were simply incapable of building.